I'd like to call the regular meeting of Council for June 12th, 2023 to order. Welcome, everybody. Before we get into the agenda, I just want to take a moment to recognize an award that's been received by our bylaw officer, Jeff Easingwood. He has been awarded the Officer of the Year for 2023 by the Bylaw Association of BC in recognition of outstanding contribution to the bylaw profession over the past year. And I just would like to state the obvious, and it's not a job that is always welcomed. It can be a tough job, so it's nice to note that somebody's received some reward for their efforts in that regard. So that's good. Second on the agenda is the introduction of late items. I'll ask the corporate administrator what we have.
Thank you, Councillor. We have two late additions this evening and one note. So late item will be added to the consent agenda, item 6B 7, and that's requesting council support for UBCM Complete Communities Fund application. The second will go under 7G, which is to have council reconsider the development variance permit 2304 for 630 Sherbrooke Avenue after consideration of the approving officer memorandum in the consent agenda. And then just one small amendment to the letters of support for Port City Spirits noted in the consent agenda, that we have 50 as opposed to 45, which was noted in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to the approval of the agenda. The recommendation that the agenda for the regular council meeting of June 12th, 2023 be adopted as presented and as amended with the addition of items 6B and 7G. I have a motion, Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Niche. All in favor? It's approved. Item 4, we have a presentation. I'd like to call on the Manager of Communications, Engagement and Social Development to introduce the annual report.
Sure thing. All right, so this is going to be a fairly brief presentation because we're hoping to have our annual public meeting. Council will decide on that later in the meeting. June 26th at 7 p.m. where we'll have a little bit of a longer format presentation. However, in the meantime, we'd just like to present the annual report essentially for consideration. I shouldn't touch things, clearly, sorry. For consideration for the public, which is part of kind of the public process of presenting to you what we did in the last year and what we're planning to do for 2023, as well as our adopted annual financial statements. So what is in an annual report? I'm just giving a bit of a brief overview. It's right here if you'd like to read the whole 60 pages, but essentially it has information on council, city departments, and an organizational chart, a bit of an overview of what we do here at the city and the services we provide, some quick statistics on city services from 2022, our strategic plan, vision, and goals, and then priority reporting for 2022, and a bit of a forward look into 2023 as to what the city's plans are. There's a pretty aggressive capital schedule for 2023, so if you'd like to see more about what the city is up to in the coming year, we really do recommend that you go have a look. There's also an update section on key projects throughout the community, so things like the RCMP station, the landfill project that happened, the dam. So those are things that are highlighted in the annual report as well. And of course, our financial statements and information on things like community enhancement grants and permissive tax exemptions. So next, we'll just share a short video that we'll be posting to our website and social media account as well, just to kind of pull out some highlights because not everybody wants to read 60 pages all of the time. So we'll share that with you now.
Hi, I just want to draw your attention to the annual report. This is a time of year where we reflect back on all the things we achieved in 2022. And of course, there was a lot of accomplishments, award-winning projects that were done right here in Prince Rupert. And all the credit goes, of course, to the previous mayor and council for the work that they did, as well as the staff team that they assembled. And the other piece of the document is forward-looking. It's looking at the work we're going to be doing this year. There's all kinds of, it's the most ambitious capital works program I think we've ever seen. So it's worth having a look at the document. You can go online, you can search it out, you can read the document yourself, but there's also going to be an opportunity on June the 26th for you to come on out and hear directly from staff about what is in the document. You can ask questions and gain a more fulsome knowledge of what's coming up. One way or the other, I hope you take a look at it. It's important to understand where we've been, what we're going through, and where we intend to go this year.
So thank you for your patience with me on that one. So next opportunity for public comment will happen at the annual public meeting, which will be held June 26th at 7 p.m. here in council chambers. And in the meantime, you can access a physical copy of the report at on our city website, at City Hall, also at the Rec Complex, and at the Public Library. We've already delivered copies to those locations as well. So we encourage people to come out and see a little bit more fulsome of a presentation, but similar to what was just presented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We can get the screen back to the participants in the meeting. I would like to just note that I'm obviously not Mayor Pond. He is on screen there. And before we get to the public comments, perhaps Mayor Pond, if you had anything you'd like to say at this point, this would be a good time to do it.
Yeah, just a real quick one, and that is that we're Director Pucci, Dr. Buchan, and myself are in Ottawa. We've just arrived, tried to get here in time so that we could participate for the meeting. And obviously, we're here to see if we can find, we're going to look under every nook and cranny to see if we can find matching funds for the provincial money that would help us get the water system done.
Thank you. Number 5 on the agenda is an opportunity for the public to offer comments. I would remind you that your comments need to be limited to items that are actually on the agenda. So with that in mind, if there's anybody from the gallery that would like to come and speak, come forward.
Thank you. My name is John Farrell. I'm one of the partners in Port City Spirits, which is coming to you for a lounge area license discussion tonight and decision. Start off with good evening, mayors, and councillors and city staff. Just a few comments. The endorsement for a lounge area was brought to council on May 9th. And in its wisdom, council decided to delay the decision for a few weeks to allow for public outreach and comment. We believe that the 50 letters of support, including letters from the Chamber of Commerce, from hoteliers and restaurants, the Kitkatla Enterprises, as well as dozens of residents, are testimony to not only that the public outreach was conducted, but that it concluded that there was strong support for a lounge license. In addition, we heard the comments and the concerns of residents, and we reached out to the management of Friendship House, who expressed no concerns with our proposed hours, location, or express business purposes. We have also contacted our Fraser Street neighbors, who also expressed no concerns and wished us well on our venture. But to make it 100% clear to council and also to the public, our intent at Port City Spirits is to create premium spirits and cocktails from local ingredients. Our summer hours reflect our interest in participating in next year's cruise season as a registered shore excursion program, and to do so responsibly and safely. We have a short-term rental that's above the distillery, which is part of our business. And so we are as sensitive to noise as the residents of Borden and Fraser Street. We're equally sensitive to drinking and driving, so we will also be encouraging our patrons to walk, bike, and taxi to the distillery. As to parking, we attended the downtown parking strategy workshop that city staff held on June 8th, and we are presently working with city staff on a parking plan. In closing, the 3 owners of Port City Spirits, that's Ray Peterson, that's Ken Orton, and Andrea Pollock, that are behind me, are very excited about this new enterprise, and so are our partners, and we hope the mayor and council will endorse our application and add a new business offering to the nightlife of Prince Rupert. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward and address the meeting? Please come forward. Yep. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Lloyd Quast. I live at 1227 11th Avenue East.
Could you just stop for a moment and start that again? Sorry about that.
My name is Lloyd Quast. I reside at 1227 11th East. I have some general questions that I want to pose to council. I don't expect answers on these questions concerning the development of a women's shelter on 1300 Hayes Cove Avenue.
So if I can kind of frame that for you, I think that we can't talk specifically about that development. We could conceivably talk about processes that are associated with development permits, and that might help you ask the questions that you're seeking to ask.
Basically, my problem is, or our neighbors that are affected by this development have never had a package delivered to them as stated on what the concept of this project would entail. Initially, all I want to do is basically read what has been put forward to us in the neighborhood. Why was it proposed? And now I don't want answers for this. These are just some of the questions that I want to bring up. And if I can't bring them up here, I'll bring them up at the next meeting. Why was a proposed development called Frederick Street and Hayes Cove Avenue? Wait, okay. No, I'm not, I don't want answers. That's one of my questions.
I think if I can help, I'm trying to help you, but I think you can, what you're really trying to find out about is what's involved in the statutory notification process, because I think that might be where your area of concern
Well, that's
lies.
a big area of concern, because when we first found out about it, it was called the proposed Frederick Street Hayes Cove Avenue project. Now it's not. To me, and this is my personal view, it should be an extension of 10th Avenue East project, because that's what the proposal is. Okay, enough said there. Why has nobody in City Hall corrected any of these statements? 90% of the people that I talk to believe that it's going down, the building is going in on the blowdown area on Frederick Street and Hayes Cove.
I'm sorry, I can't. We can't talk about the specific project because it's not on the agenda.
Don't expect answers now.
No, but what I'm saying is it can't be a part of this meeting. What you could ask about, though, because there are other development proposals here that involve the statutory notification process, you could ask what that process entails.
Okay, fine. Then I'm going to stop right there, because I will let my wife speak on that. She has delved for information on that process.
For anybody who doesn't know, I'm Dawn Quast.
Welcome.
I have just got to. I would like to know, in the minutes where it says that council proceed with the statutory notification process, and I just happened to notice tonight that that's not capitalized, so I'm guessing that it's really not a process that's written down somewhere. And I did do some digging, and thanks to those who helped me with that. I would just like to know where it was, because I looked through the Northern View, I looked through the Facebook page, and I looked on the website, and I saw no notification after the meeting of May the 8th and prior to the meeting of the 23rd of any notification whatsoever. That's,
I think that perhaps Dr. Buchan, I'm wondering if you could comment on this, because I think we can move this one along a little bit.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that there is some confusion about the public notification process for this one. And I did ask staff to take a look in the files to see if it was done. And what we found is we found the list of all the property owners that it would go out to. However, our records have not included a check to make sure they actually have gone out. So in this particular case, because we actually have never collected the information to verify that letters have gone out after lists are all prepared, and because there's some folks that have said they haven't received anything, in this particular case, what I'm suggesting is the staff is that we actually send out the notices and keep a record of the mail merge going forward. So for this particular development variance permit application, staff will be sending out notices again if they haven't already gone out, just to make sure that everybody has received a copy of the variance application. I'd like to say, just for background, the property is already zoned, so the question of land use is not one before council. It's just the variance. So we'll ensure that in this case the variances are definitely will definitely go out, and people will have an opportunity to express their opinion to council after having received that information. So I think there may be some confusion on this one. We're correcting our process to make sure that such confusion in the future doesn't occur. Does that help, Mr. Chair?
It does. What I would like to ask then is a procedural question, whether it's directed to you or perhaps the corporate administrator. Would you be looking for a motion from council on this to extend the public notification periods to include these notifications?
Mr. Chair, we don't need that. We will simply be going ahead with sending out notices again to make absolutely certain that folks have received notice of the proposed variance. And once they receive that, they'll have an opportunity to see whatever information is available at the time.
Okay, thank you.
can I just ask
Absolutely,
one
please.
more question?
Yeah.
I understand what it is. It's about the variance from what's allowed, the 4 stories and the smaller parking lot and all of that. Where is there an opportunity for us to say what we think about the fact that the project is going to be there? I know I keep hearing that it's already zoned for that, but there's so many questions, concerns about it. Is there no place for us to express our concerns?
I would ask Dr. Buchan to comment on that.
Mr. Chair, members of the public can always, express their views to council about any existing zoned property. We don't hold formal processes for that outside of rezoning processes or redoing a zoning bylaw, but certainly in the interim, that's always open to folks. And when we send out the notices for council to consider the variance application again, people will, may choose to use that as an opportunity, even though the notice is just on the variance. So council can make a decision to, outside through that process on direction to staff to re-examine land uses, but that is not typically what we look for. But it is certainly council's prerogative.
And just as a follow-up, is there an opportunity in 2 weeks, the meeting would include a committee of the whole meeting? Would there be an opportunity there for members of the public to be included in that to express their thoughts?
Committee of the whole is not where the public comment is. It's in the council meetings, and it's on regarding items on agenda.
I guess that would be my point. I would want to know that that was on the agenda to allow for those concerns to be expressed.
When the notices go out, and the council reviews again the variance application, people will have that opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And please, if there's questions that you have that you would like to address in a conversation with staff, I'm sure they're more than happy to have those conversations outside the context of a meeting like this as well. Okay. Well, as I said, we can speak to items that are on the agenda for tonight. So this particular project is not on tonight's agenda. And the reason I tried to frame that in terms of process is because parallel processes are on the agenda. So we've kind of looked at the statutory notification process. You could ask about that, but you would not be able to ask about the particular development that is of concern because it's not on the agenda.
We'll wait for 2 weeks for that.
Okay, okay. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to items on the agenda? Please. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Terry Saka, taxpayer of Prince Rupert. I've got 2 items that I'd like to speak to. One is the request for variance on the application on Fraser Street. I find it very interesting that initially, when the request was put forward, that the distillery was going to have a tasting bar. 8 months later, the proponents are looking at a lounge bar, 35 seat, no parking provided, and looking for exception to the rule. To get 40, 50, 100 signatures on a piece of paper is not a big deal in Prince Rupert. So I would think that council would put not a great deal of weight on something like that. There is a concern. One is the parking in that area. 2, there are 2 childcare facilities, which I'm sure will be impacted by the hours of operation from 11 o'clock in the morning, or 10 o'clock in the morning, I believe, to 11 o'clock at night, and then Friday and Saturday from 10 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the morning, I believe. And to say that we're going to offer a new experience, well, I believe we're building a bigger police station for people that are having a new experience or better experience or greater experience with alcohol. So I would ask City Council to take a good look at whether this is a viable idea for that area. There's going to be an empty facility down on the waterfront in the next few months when the brewery moves farther down. And I would think that maybe the proponents would look at that area versus the Fraser Street area. That's what I have to say on that. The second one I would like to address is the development on 9th Avenue West. And I was a little surprised when I seen the panel put on the property that there's going to be a 40-unit development. I was involved when the school district was proposing the middle school. The high school be changed from a high school to a middle school. I went to all the meetings. listened to all the things. And initially, I was a supporter of the middle school because I had experienced a middle school system in Ketchikan when we used to take our young kids up there to play basketball. But the age groups changed, so I wasn't very supportive. The thing that I question is the property that is going to be part of this development. All the
Mr. Chair, if I can interrupt just for one moment. I'm sorry, Mr. Saka. Is this with respect to that property that's just had the public hearing?
it's on here. It's a development. At the last meeting that I was at, I was told that this development is going to be discussed at the June 12th meeting. Today is June 12th, right?
I just want to be clear. Is this the property that council just had the public hearing on?
Yes, it is.
Then Mr. Saka cannot speak to council on the public hearing is closed.
Okay, so for Mr. Saka, then could you clarify what period of time that is and when this would come up at a point where he could comment on it?
The council cannot address this matter with the public or anybody else until it's made a final decision on the bylaw, and that we can't give a time frame on.
Okay, so to clarify, Mr. Saka, I think what's being said here is that the opportunity for you to say the things that you are saying was at the public hearing, which was at 6 o'clock tonight, rather than this meeting. And once the public hearing is over, which it ended at about 6:30, I think, at that point, that is the end of input, and there is no input until we make our decision. That's my understanding of the procedures involved in this.
Well, if that's the case, then why wasn't that expressed at the meeting when there was somebody was asking whether the price of the property, whether it's going to be sold at the going rate.
And Mr. Chair, I don't think any discussion on this is appropriate. Perhaps Mr. Saka could be referred to staff and we can try and help him with the answers.
I think that might be the best course of action. I understand the frustration on your part, but I also understand by experience that is the way that the public hearing process works. Once the public hearing has been held, and this is not new, this is the standard procedure, at that point the public input is over until the decision is made. And that was the opportunity for public input.
My question to you is, reading the sign that's down there, it doesn't state that there's going to be a public hearing at 6 o'clock on June the 12th. And again, at the last meeting that I was at, there was no discussions that there's going to be a public hearing at 6 o'clock on June the 12th. What was said that this matter will be on the agenda on June the 12th. So this is June the 12th.
I think that the public meeting was advertised in the same way that the regular meeting agendas are advertised. I don't think there was anything out of the ordinary about that. I think it was, and we had a number of people in the room, so it must have been advertised.
Well, my only response to that is, we have an issue here, and we have an issue of transparency.
And we heard,
this is one of them.
And we heard a great deal in terms of public opinion on it. And the opinions that we heard will be part of the decision that we make tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else like to come and address the meeting? Please come forward. Welcome.
Thank you. On now?
You're on.
Perfect.
Yep.
Hello, Council, Mayor, Speaker. My name is Paul. I moved here about 2 years ago. I work for CN Rail. Originally a Vancouver resident. Came up here for work. Myself and my partner. In the time we've been here, we've really fallen in love with this small community. I'm here to express my support for the distillery opening. One of the things I've really found about this community is the small niche businesses, such as the Wheelhouse and other locations in town, that have really impressed a community feel and things that you can really respect about your community, that bring in tourism, have a namesake that you can show pride in your community. With them moving changes, one of the things that was addressed just recently was location. Repurposing different areas of the city is huge. With the container facilities going down in the waterfront, the Wheelhouse moving to the old CN location, I think diversifying and moving around and opening new businesses that can anchor and drive new opportunities in the city with all the decrepit and torn down properties that aren't generating anything for the city. I really would have to counter that argument of not wanting to go into that location. To be honest, I didn't even know that street really existed for the first year and a half that I lived here. There's not much there that I would be privy to or go to. So it's nice to see a draw to this particular location. I don't know much about zoning or any information on that, but I would just like to express my support for something new to coming to town, for people trying to open a new business, support their community, our tax base, everything like that. I'm a little tardy in my letters, but I brought 4 additional to make it 54. Does not need to go on the record. As well, I deal with a lot of people from out of town. Most of my transportation employees who I manage who bring trains in and out of the city are based out of Terrace or Smithers. And in my discussions with some of these people, I particularly remember a Terrace running trades employee who's been actually following up with me asking when this development is going to open, because he's very excited about that. So just in my communications who I've been dealing with, I see a lot of opportunity and draw to bring people to enjoy this beautiful city.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, could I just get the last name of the speaker, please? Thank you.
And is there anybody else who would like to come forward? Please. Welcome.
Evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Tom Chang. I'm a property owner and business owner in Prince Rupert. I also own a office building on Fraser Street, as well as the Ocean View Hotel. And I'm here to support the development of Port City Spirit, and I think it will be a great addition to the community and the city and the tourism aspect of the proposal. I think right now with the cruise, the number of cruise ships coming in, having an additional attraction is a plus. And being a bar owner, and I think this will really enhance the selections of entertainment selection in the city. So I strongly support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward? We have a question from Councilor Niche.
Just seeing that this is in the correspondence letters of support, I don't see it on the agenda as far as the conversation for tonight. So are we doing this at the next meeting? Because that was my understanding first, that this was going on the June 26th. So I just would like to clarify that.
Dr. Buchan?
Mr. Chair, if I can defer that to a corporate officer.
Thank you. We can certainly, if council wishes to do so, you can absolutely consider it. We would need to add it to the agenda. My understanding was at the last meeting that we would present the letters of support, and then council would have a conversation and any questions.
Am I able to add that to the agenda then, that we discuss it tonight?
We would need a motion. Moved Councilor Niche, seconded Councilor Forster. All in favor? Motion is passed. Can I ask a question then, because I think there's likely a question in the room. I'm assuming that the comments on this particular item were permissible according to the rules because the The letters were in the consent agenda. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to come forward? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. We have the council minutes, and just for the people in the room, the consent agenda is a number of items that we pass collectively. It's for informational purposes and so on. We have reports, including the new item in terms of looking for support for the UBCM. And the normal process is that we would seek a motion to approve these collectively, but I would like to just inquire if there's any council members that have any questions. I'll start with Councillor Forster.
Thank you. I had 4 questions. The first one deals with the annual report. I understand we're going to be talking about that more next meeting. Would I ask my question now about a question I have about Appendix D, or would I wait for that meeting?
I'd seek some advice from Dr. Buchan on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd have to defer that to Ms. Stewart to see if she's prepared to answer questions in this meeting.
Is Appendix D the community enhancement grant?
Yeah.
Sorry. I may end up deferring this question to Corinne, our CFO, if she's able to answer it. Sorry. Bit of ping pong.
I'll tell you what my question is. I'm just trying to understand, when I'm looking at Appendix D, it looks like we went about almost $52,500 over on the Tourism Prince Rupert hotel tax transfer, and I just didn't understand why.
Oh, good. I like the simple questions. Okay, so that is because there was more hotel tax that was received than was budgeted, and we actually passed that on to tourism as is required. So there was more in, we were able to give more out.
Perfect. Thank you. My second question is about the CAPS request. I'm not understanding why it will cost $35,000 plus to deliver H2O to the gardens, and so I'm just wondering why it would cost so much to deliver water when we already have the truck to deliver or to water the plants around the city. So I don't know if anybody can help.
I think that's a question for Dr. Buchan, possibly through to Mr. Pucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will defer that to Mr. Pucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the $30,000 was an estimate to put in a new water service to the property. It was not to take a water truck there. The city doesn't have a water truck. What we have is a smaller, like watering station type thing that we have in the back of the truck that waters our hanging plants. We haven't been doing the hanging plants the last couple of years, so I was under the impression that we were looking to do a water service, like an actual service with a standpipe to the property. So that was the cost that was estimated there.
And your third question?
Well, I have a redirect on that one. Okay. Are we able to ask staff to give us an estimate on using the small truck to refill a water tank for them, or is that something we could do?
I think that's back to Mr. Pucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We can take that away and discuss it as a group. I know that in the past they've used watering barrels. I'm not sure if that's an opportunity there. Rain barrel capture. I'm not sure that was my understanding of how they watered before. But what we can do is take that away and see what the cost and if we can fit that into a schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. My third question. There's a letter from the district that there's going to be upgrades to the recycling depot. What will that look like?
Dr. Buchan?
I will defer that to Mr. Pucci.
I'm actually unaware of any upgrades to the recycling depot. The depot is run by the regional district, and our city staff don't have any dealings with the maintenance and that of that facility. So I'm unaware of any upgrades going on there.
Thank you. And my last question relates to Port City Spirits. We've got quite a few letters of support. I haven't seen any letters against it from family members who have children in the daycare. Have we received any?
Dr. Buchan, perhaps to the corporate administrator.
Yes, if the corporate administrator can respond to that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. We have not received any letters against the development. All in favor.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cunningham.
Two things on the CAPS request. Maybe we could simplify it and have the fire department go out there and just use the fire hydrant down the street to fill their water. Quite simple solution to the problem. I think, and I don't know. We'd have to direct that to fire department staff, but it's just a thought. And Friendship House has sent a letter in support of Port City Spirits, and they're the ones that run that daycare. So I think they've probably talked to some of their clients, and I don't think they would have sent a letter of support without talking to their clients first.
I might also say that since that item is coming later, that we could probably include those observations there.
And one thing, we have an application for a rezone that happened in April 7th, 2021, 2 years ago, and we were waiting for the applicant is on hold until the applicant provides additional documentation. I think 2 years that should be revisited. McKay Street.
For clarity, that's in the development activity report.
Yeah, which is reports, yeah.
Dr. Buchan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask Director Pope if she has any update on that particular application.
Thank you. To the chair, it hasn't been 2 years without receiving additional information. The additional information has been received within the last 6 months, which is the timeline that we will generally take a permit for an application off. It's just updates are sent pretty intermittently. So as long as there's been an update within the last 6 months, we retain it on our activity report.
As I recall, the application was from R2 to R3, from a duplex to a fourplex. And I've observed extensive renovations going on there that are now finished. So I'm just curious what's going on. That's all.
Mr. Chair, with that information, we will ask staff to go and investigate.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else regarding the consent agenda? Well, then I would seek a motion that all items on the consent agenda be accepted as noted and filed. Councillor Randhawa, Councillor Cunningham, all in favor? The motion is passed. Move on to reports. First up is a report from the Director of Development Services, Development Variance Permit 2311. Do we have the report, or shall we just do the motion? I think we'll do the motion then. The motion is that Council proceeds with the statutory notification process for Development Variance Permit 2311 for 330 8th Avenue East. Moved Councillor Niche, seconded Councillor Cunningham. Any comments or questions? All in favor? The motion is passed. Next is a report from the Director of Development Services for Development Variance Permit 2313. I'm going to assume that it will go the same in terms of process. Excuse me. The motion is that Council proceeds with the statutory notification process for Development Variance Permit 2313 for 1808 and 1810 7th Avenue East. Moved Councillor Cunningham, seconded Councillor Randhawa. Any discussion? All in favor? The motion is passed. Third is a recommendation that council proceeds with approval for development variance permit application 2306 for 212 9th Avenue East. Moved Councillor Skelton Morvan, seconded Councillor Niche. Any discussion? All in favor? The motion is passed. Next, a recommendation that council proceed with approval for development variance permit application 2309 for 1129 8th Avenue East. 11th Avenue East, what did I say? Oh, really? Okay. Do we have a mover? Councillor Randhawa, seconder. Councillor Niche. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Motion passes. Next, that council proceed with approval for development variance permit application 2310 for 945 Hayes Cove Avenue. Do we have a mover? Councillor Forster. Second, Councillor Cunningham. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Motion is passed. Item 7F, a report from the Director of Operations and Intergovernmental Relations regarding the 4th Avenue West pathway. Is there, I'm assuming there's something to say about this one. Dr. Buchan, that's through to Mr. Pucci.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just to go over the report really quickly, so council receives this report, and if council wishes to proceed with the investigation on the 4th Avenue pathway, that we recommend using the Odd-Eidsvik Park budget first. So just to sort of reiterate, on January 19th, a severe storm caused a slope failure. A tree fell on the pathway, also lodged a bunch of debris against the decking, and so there is some significant damage. We closed the pathway due to health and safety concerns. The reason why we did this was because of the age of the structure and the build quality. There is a potential for rot in some of the structural members, we believe. The material and the tree, we think that it might have caused some shifting from the linear posts on the pedestals, and maybe some undermining with the rains. We're also concerned about code compliance on the entire structure, including the stairs, now that repairs must be made. I've laid out some of the costs there. These costs are from proposals that we've received, so it's approximately $40,000. There's a few ways that we can go and fund this. One is through the paving program. Obviously, that would mean a reduction in paving. The Odd-Eidsvik Park drainage money, this would postpone the project. We have not received funds through our grants yet, so this will likely be a 2024 project. There's parks operation money, but this would reduce the overall parks budget, so this would mean a reduction in service. And then the last is that we could leave it and look to budget it in 2024. So staff do understand that many of the public use this pathway. There is another one, however, off of Agnew. It is a little bit farther down the street. We know that the absolute minimum cost is between $35,000 and $40,000, and any major repairs outside of that will require me to come back to council to figure out how to pay for any structural repairs that need to be completed. So staff are just asking for direction from council on how they would like to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think what we'll do is we'll put the motion on the floor and then we'll invite comment. So the recommendation is that council receives this report, and if the council wishes to proceed with rehabilitation on the 4th Avenue East pathway, staff recommends using the Odd Eidsvik Park budget first for the purposes of investigation. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded Councillor Skelton-Morven. Comments, questions? Councillor Niche.
I was just going to go with the recommended Odd Eidsvik Park drainage because if it's not going to be in the budget realistically this year, then that would probably make the most sense to use that, you know, option out of the 4 that were proposed.
Any other comments? I do have a contextual question in that we're kind of talking about 2 different projects for the purposes of solving a pressing problem, and I know that we heard loud and clear how immediate the concern is around the 4th Avenue pathway. I would just like to pause just long enough to ask if there's any adverse impacts on the Odd Eidsvik Park project if we were to do this with that portion of the budget. Dr. Buchan, I'm not sure. Who would I refer that question to?
Mr. Chair, I'll defer that to Mr. Pucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely, there's a cause and effect here. The effect is that we will not have the matching funds this year to be able to match against any grant that we get towards that Odd Eidsvik Park, and the park will definitely not get done this year and will be pushed into next year. We believe that if we do get a grant, that grant will allow us to do the work next year, so this will just be postponed into next year. We were planning on doing the drainage this year in preparation for the park next year. However, we will, if council wishes to go down this route, then we will have to postpone that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Cunningham.
Last time we discussed this, we were looking at the transportation plan and possible grants or money from that area instead of parks. Can we get some sort of clarification if there's any grants available through the transportation plan and grants for that? Because it's more a transportation than a parks thing, I believe.
Dr. Buchan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that the city has applied for active transportation grants, but I don't know if we can actually divert funds for this specific project. I don't believe that we have it for actual capital projects, but I could be corrected. Mr. Pucci, do you have any further information on that?
Thank you, Dr. Buchan. Yeah, so you're correct. We do have a little bit of active transportation money. That money has it only can be allocated towards planning and development. It can't be towards capital projects. You know, going into grants, it does take time to get a grant, so we can apply for grants in transportation and active transportation, but it doesn't mean we'll get them. And applying for a grant today will likely mean that we won't get anything till next year anyways. So it's unlikely that we'll get a transportation grant for this project.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes. The new item that was added is for 630 Sherbrooke. It's development variance permit 2304, and I think the item is referred to in the consent agenda, and in that document it suggests that one of the criteria for moving this along is that City Council would approve the development variance permit. So I think what we're looking for is a motion to move this this variance to the public notification process. Can I have a mover for that? Councillor Forster, Councillor Skelton Morvan. Any comments or questions? All in favor? The motion passes. On to bylaws.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, you were going to consider the liquor license amendment for Port City Spirits.
Oh, that would be here. Okay. So would that be a motion? If you could give me some wording for that, that would be awesome.
Yes, of course. From the previous meeting, it was that council consider support for the liquor license amendment for the lounge area endorsement for 801 Fraser Street.
In moving the motion, Councillor Forster, seconded Councillor Niche. Comments? Councillor Niche.
I just wanted to give my support for this project. I believe that, you know, obviously there's been a lot of support in the community for it. There has been a couple people speak against it in front of us, and you know, one using the Friendship House as a reason, and the Friendship House is not opposed to this. And you know, there was parking concerns. Well, I think this day and age, we're trying to encourage people not to drink and drive. So parking, you know, to me is irrelevant in this conversation. I mean, obviously, you know, there is people that are designated drivers, and I do feel there's we are a constricted parking town. I mean, we're never going to solve that problem. But yeah, I'll use Sunset Lounge as an example. I mean, it's a current business that there was no opposition because of parking or anything, and it's a business on 3rd Avenue that has really zero parking and not nearly as much parking as would be available probably for this Port City. So you know, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to rebuild our downtown, and we need people and businesses to do it. And I'm supportive of businesses that are wanting to make Prince Rupert a better experience, because, you know, I was walking downtown one day during a cruise ship, and, you know, there's people standing there with a map. They're looking at it, they're looking around, and they're going, this is kind of boring. And that's not what I want to hear. I want people to use different businesses and go to these different places and have a good experience. And I think that this operation is not a typical, you know, drinking establishment where, you know, maybe, you know, one would watch a stripper at 12 o'clock during the day and encourage people to, you know, drink heavily during the day. So I feel that, you know, this is offering a good experience to people that are wanting to come in off a cruise ship, and I feel that the local people that'll be using this facility will be, you know, in full enjoyment of it, and I fully support it.
Councillor Cunningham.
When you look at the support they've got, it's a broad support. They've got all the you know, I actually, before a lot of the letters came in, actually did a walk up and down Fraser and asked people on the street what they thought about it, and I didn't find one person opposed to it. That's the people on the street. So it's their neighborhood. And I think when you look at the letters of support, it's a broad sort of view of the town. So I think the town supports it, and I think this council has to support it too. I don't think, you know, I'm not a tourism type guy. These business people are. I don't think they're going to be getting a lot of business from the cruise ships to begin with till it gets going. But you know, the fact that the community is going to support it is the important part, I think. And that, as for the parking, you know, unfortunately we haven't passed the parking strategy yet, but that's coming soon, and that'll help. You know, so it's all going to mesh together, I believe, and help. And you know, the first time around there was more negativity. This time around there's so much positivity that I don't think we can do anything but support it. I think it's you know, I think in the end it's going to rejuvenate a part of that town. If you go down Fraser, there's some buildings there that have probably been there since the town started. You know, so you know they look like they've been there that long too. So
You know, I think it's going to be improvement in that area. You know, I think the city's going to have to step up and improve the road a little bit because people look like they're staggering just walking across it anyways. So I definitely support it.
Councillor Forster.
Thank you. The very first meeting, we heard from quite a few people that were against it leading up to the meeting as well. And a key concern I heard was that people didn't feel they had enough time to give feedback. And what I've heard through the questions tonight is that we didn't receive any letters from parents of children in the daycare or from the daycares themselves, which to me indicates there is support amongst the community and not from the people that we were hearing may have concerns. Those people didn't indicate concerns. And so to me, I don't think we can do anything but support this project. Thanks.
Councillor Cunningham.
One other thing, people keep talking about the start time. Well, you know, I've been in town quite a few years. Councillor Nice was born here. Other people, same thing. We had a very thriving liquor area in that area that opened at similar times. And I don't think it caused a lot of problems earlier in the day, maybe later on in the day, but you know, I don't think it was ever really a problem in the mornings and that, and I don't think that it's going to be a problem here either.
If I could also offer just a comment as well. I recognize that there has been a pretty extensive and broad expression of support for this, and people have expressed that in different ways. And I do think that that matters in terms of the deliberations that a council will make on an issue. We are here to represent as best we can the majority views. And so from that perspective, I echo some of those comments, but I do want to just balance it a little bit. And that is that one of the core arguments that come out as a concern has to do with alcohol and addictions. And, you know, you can drive around town and you can see the devastating impact of that on people. It's not hard to find. And so I just want to acknowledge, even as I'm from the sort of council perspective supporting a project that appears to have overwhelming support, I want to acknowledge that the concern related to alcohol is legitimate and valid, and I think we have to acknowledge that. And also point out that there are a lot of other avenues and ways in which not only council, but Northern Health and various other public institutions are concerned about the impact of alcohol on a community and on individuals in the community. I think that that project of trying to make progress there is alive and well, and it's tremendously important, and I'm pretty sure that everybody who supported this establishment might echo that as well. So I think we need to keep that in mind. Having said that, my own individual perspective as a councillor is that we've received a lot of expression of support for this project. Is there anybody else? Councillor Randhawa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, like last time when we had this one in the council meeting, so we asked for support, and I was the one who made motion to get extra time for people to get support, to give us feedback. So we got the feedback from people, and you already said both ways, right? And I echo that, but so I will be supporting this motion.
Anyone else? Councillor Skelton Morvan.
So I guess to lead with the fact that I don't drink, so I don't really have any skin in the game per se. But for me, I trying to weigh both sides of the coin is that trying to improve the amenities in Prince Rupert and quality of life in Prince Rupert, but also trying to balance those needs and social aspects as well. I think a lot of folks, when we hear these pieces, don't really understand the root cause of alcohol abuse and addictions and different things like that. And a lot of those are pieces around trauma And then the challenge itself is not necessarily the addiction; it just tends to be the coping mechanism and becomes the crutch. So for me, when we have challenges like this, and you see folks that are stumbling around in the community, and I will call the nickel per se like it is, and there is the vast majority of them are Indigenous and are struggling with different challenges, and it's something that we as a society, although we have inherited this system, it's something that was inflicted years and years and years ago. And there's a collective spiritual wound because of that, and that hurts differently for folks. So for me, looking at these pieces, and for us, when we see folks like that, it's not necessarily at the fault of the liquor institutions, it's a failure of society and social programs. So for us, finding ways to advocate to make sure that that need is being met, I think is a big part that we can balance that, and not necessarily, shutting down future opportunity and different things like that. But, and that's not to say that, again, doesn't come without concern. And I appreciate every single person that has come out to express their opinions either for or against. But again, for me, I guess at this time, do we have a motion on the floor that has moved and seconded at this point?
Yes,
Yeah.
we do. It has been moved and seconded.
Perfect. I call the question.
Is there anybody else? If the question's called, then all in favor? All opposed? Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Next, also under bylaws, the City of Prince Rupert Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 3507, 2023. The recommendation is that Council gives third reading to the City of Prince Rupert Amendment Bylaw 3507, 2023. Moved by Councillor Niche, seconded. Councillor Skelton Morvan. Comments? Councillor Niche.
Just to make sure, I'm talking about, this is the 9th Avenue one once again, is it not? Right? 3507. Oh, just a second. Sorry. Let's see which one.
3507, Mr. Chair, is for the rezoning of 9th Avenue. There is a 3506 bylaw also needing consideration this evening. That was on the agenda prior to the 3507.
Did I skip something?
Possibly.
Possibly. Well, you're very kind. Should we go back to that one then, or should we carry on with this one?
You have a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded. You could certainly carry on with this and then just go back to 3506.
So
let's do that then.
Okay. So this is for 9th. Yeah. Well, I was reading the numbers and. So, anyways, housing. This is such an interesting thing. I mean, our community screams for housing. We know that we need it in every which way, shape, and form. Whether it's houses, townhouses, apartment buildings, short-term rentals, anything. We need all of it. And it's the same thing every time. You get usually people that live in the local areas nearby are usually opposed, and it's understandable. It's a big change to your neighborhood, and people are they struggle with big changes like that. And hearing a little bit of opposition this evening as far as what their concerns were on that particular project on 9th. Some of those questions will be answered later in the process if it continues further on in the development permit stage. So it is a big building, but it is not uncommon to have higher density, and especially in our town where we have to build higher density properties just because of the development costs to build these properties. I mean, these are just numbers that I've heard through other people in the community, but as an example, the Lac Vilams housing project, I've heard numbers somewhere in the neighborhood of $9 million to get the property to develop, just ready to build on. So in our town, because of Muskeg, we have to condense buildings in order to make developments viable. And this is an example of it. I mean, it's a smaller property, but if they're able to satisfy all the requirements that are needed for parking and for traffic and all those things, then I'm supportive of it. And moving forward on that particular project, the school district, the statement from the school district tonight to me was not so much opposition, but more about just pointing out the fact that it's going to be noisy with 400 kids and bells going off. So now everyone has the choice to live next to, across from a school. Nobody forces you to live anywhere, but what this does is gives people options. So I'm in full support of moving forward to the next reading.
Anybody else? Councillor Cunningham.
All we're doing right now is just rezoning the property. If the variances and everything come later, that's when the public can actually have their say in that. There's going to be quite a bit of conversation about this. It's an interesting project. We need the housing. Is it the right place? I don't particularly know. I haven't been there during beginning or the end of the day and things like that. I know traffic could be a big problem, but that'll all be part of the plan, the development variance and everything. So all we're doing is just rezoning right now. The variance for the size of the building and everything else comes later.
Can I ask then, perhaps I'm confused about that aspect of it then. So what I heard in the public meeting, in fairness to those that were here and participated and those that have views on this, I heard a lot of concern. I heard concern very, very much over the traffic, the impact on traffic. And I've as a former teacher, I'm well aware of just how congested that gets in that area, and also up on Prince Rupert Boulevard at the same time of day. It is a real problem. I can only imagine that this will add to the scale of the problem and would require that much more energy in terms of resolving it. I also heard concern over the proximity to a school. So I'm hearing those concerns, and then I'm hearing a lot of, well, this is what we'd like to do, but these other questions will get resolved with the development permit stage. So my question then, perhaps to Dr. Buchan, if we approve this zoning change, at what point then is council going to be participating in a decision based on people's views on the development itself? Dr. Buchan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the question. I did have my hand up, so I'll lower it. After I'm done speaking, I would like Director Pope to advise on what variances, if any, and at what stage they'd be dealt with. So I'm not completely clear with, and being remote, I'm not sure that I have all the information I need right now. I will say that with respect to commenting on the development specifically, council has delegated all development permits to staff. Development variance permits go to the council. So I'd like to just Director Pope to comment on if in fact there will be a variance presented to council, or if it's handled in another way. I would also say that there are some 8 parcels involved here. And I think one of the people speaking tonight said that they're zoned duplex, or R2. Now, they may not all be zoned R2, but let's just assume for a moment that they are all zoned R2. 8 duplexes, and as council may recall, the council zoning bylaw allows for suites to be associated with each duplex unit. So on each of those parcels, you could actually have 4 units. if they're all duplex. And so 8 times 4 is 36 units. And 40 units are being proposed.
32, I think, but
okay. Sorry, your math is better than mine. 32. So this is actually just in terms of actual permitted density, assuming all R2 zone, it's not that much. It's a modest sized housing development, and as council has been working hard through its housing action plan and strategy to encourage some new housing. I think this will be, if this gets off to in a way this year like they're hoping to, this will be, if not the first, one of the first new housing projects in Prince Rupert for a very long time. I'm as a planner, I would say, I think we should have residential by schools. The schools should be in neighborhoods. This proposal is consistent with the official committee plan. So, it certainly from a staff point of view, I don't think that we have concerns. We don't share the same level of concern that's been expressed about traffic. I think that the traffic impact actually will be modest, especially considering what the incremental density would be. So if I can hand this over to Director Pope to speak to what variances might be involved here.
Thank you to the chair. So at this time, we've only received these preliminary designs. We don't actually require designs of the building at the rezoning process, which is why at this point they are preliminary. To my knowledge, the developer will not be applying for additional variances on the property, but depending on the designs they bring forward that are final, that may change. So to my knowledge at this point, the next step would be, if this is approved, to move to the development permit, which, as Dr. Buckingham has stated, has been delegated. I will note that at the development permit stage, we can require documents such as a traffic impact study and as well as design pieces, and ensure that all of that fits with our official community plan. At this point, the design does fit with it, as Dr. Buckingham iterated.
So if I could follow up then, as I said, we're hearing a lot of these concerns, and so it doesn't sound to me like unless the plans as they emerge involve variances, and we don't know that they're going to involve variances, it sounds to me like this is actually the time at which council is needing to consider the points of opposition to the process. So if I'm correct in interpreting the process, if we pass this on third reading, I guess what I'm wondering, it might need to be in the form of some kind of amendment. I'm wondering if there's a way to include finding more out in between the third reading and the fourth reading, so that we come back to it with a little more information on what people are concerned about. Dr. Buchan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Council has to be careful at this point in terms of asking for new reports that could be tantamount to receiving additional information post public hearing. I think that the question before council is this land use appropriate? That's the question that's before council right now. It's a land use question. Council has established development permit guidelines, and that's what we follow in assessing these, and that's why it's been delegated to staff. Council has stepped away from reviewing the detailed development plans, and by decision that has been delegated to staff. We have the ability to ask for traffic studies if we feel is necessary. Staff will certainly discuss that, and if it is necessary, we'll ask for it.
I guess as a final comment from me, and I know there's some others that would like to speak, I think there needs to be a traffic study involved in this project. So I'm going to just leave that as a statement. Councillor Forster.
Thank you. So what's actually on the floor in front of us is the variance. And there's nothing, I don't see actually anyone has actually spoken to a disagreement with the actual variance. So to me, what I think might be an option is we address this and then separately look at our process, because what we're dancing around almost is whether or not we want to continue having things delegated to staff, or whether or not we want those things to come back to us for discussion. Because the variance itself, there's no reason not to approve that. What we're wanting to discuss is something that's not on the table in front of us. And so either we have to do a motion separate to rediscuss that, or we need to relook at how we're doing things, because I think this is something that's going to keep coming up over and over again, that people are not going to necessarily agree with different projects, but we've already delegated that to staff. And so I think we need to relook at that process if that's what we want to do. Thank you.
Councillor Niche.
I will I believe that because of this is within 800 meters of a highway, I believe it has to have a traffic study anyways. I could be incorrect on that, but I believe that's part of the process already, because that's pretty well our whole town, because our highway runs right through the whole town. So, we're not very wide, we're long. So, pretty well anyone that wants a development within 800 meters of the highway has to have approval from Ministry of Highways anyways. So, and I think moving forward on this too is that the school district, when they someday build the new school, when the government finally goes ahead with this, I'm sure that there is the opportunity there to have discussions with them about maybe making better pickup and drop off spots in the new parking lot for the new school, which will alleviate probably most of the problems. Realistically, if you throw, let's just say there's the 40 units in this building, is 40 people going to walk out of that building and jump into 40 cars at 8:35 every morning and drive off? Or you can have one or two cars that are going to be trying to add to the congestion of the school district. So to me, it's the whole traffic it's not going to be 40 people leaving at the same time that all the school kids are leaving. It's going to be, progressive. So I don't really agree with that argument at all. But I do believe that we have to have a traffic study, not a traffic study, but a Ministry of Highways approval, because it's within the 800 meters anyways.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mayor Pond.
I just want to correct Councillor Forster. This is actually a rezoning bylaw. So we're changing the zoning on that property. It comes with a restriction. So you're correct. It comes with a height restriction that's lower than what the new zoning would normally allow. But technically speaking, I think we have to be aware that if you approve the zoning change, and if the developer brings a project forward that requires no new variances, this could be the approval that allows them to go ahead with the project. And I'll just tell you that while I appreciate the concern of the neighbors in that neighborhood, my experience has been that every project in every neighborhood has concerns, and I expect that staff working with the developer will be able to overcome them. We desperately need the housing, and so I'm certainly voting in favor of the bylaw rezoning.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham.
But just really quickly, thank you for the correction. Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Cunningham. Yep.
Okay, so we're rezoning this to RM3 with a height restriction of 13 meters, correct?
21 meters, I think.
Pardon me?
Can I ask Director Pope to respond to that, please?
The height restriction will be for 21 meters, and it's an R5 zone is the proposal.
Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Skelton Morvan.
I guess I can probably just sum this up with a number of 3,000, and 3,000 housing units needed now just to keep up with the growth. We've got families where there's 14 people crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment. Although many of my colleagues might not be getting the same emails, I do get these emails on a regular basis because I've been very transparent in my own upbringing. But I look at these pieces and we're having challenges in every single neighborhood, and there will always be concerns. And not to say that this is a case of NIMBYism. It's more so just, again, the traffic studies and safety and all of those other pieces. I think for us, it's just like putting these pieces into perspective. And I agree with Mayor Pond's concerns that we desperately need this housing. But again, it's trying to find that middle ground where we have this feedback process and that folks can kind of come forward with these concerns. But I mean, the reality is we can only build in so many locations. There are so many locations that are complete write-offs because they are wetlands and we cannot build on them. So finding places that do have a more feasible opportunity. And as Councillor Nish had mentioned on the Lac Lam's project, it is $9 million just to get it up to grade. Thankfully, we have funds that allow us to be able to get there. If this was just a private sector investment, they would run for the hills, because looking at that amount of capital being dropped just to bring it up to grade makes that project not feasible. So for us, looking again, is just again a matter of perspective of looking at the 3,000 housing units that were needed. At this point, it's not even really looking at studies on whether or not we need the housing. It's not a debate at this point. For us, it's just, again, looking at these pieces, how can we best suit the needs of both the growth of the economy and the community, but also recognizing the homeowners in the neighborhoods that, again, have their concerns around density and safety. Thank you.
Councillor Randawa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, like I live here almost 30 years and see that property like that. And like our manager said, like 32 units can be built right now on that property. So only 8 extra units we are building on. And we have some interest in that property. And we do need housing in this community. And so I'm supporting this amendment.
I think I'll remind people the motion is that we give third reading to amendment bylaw number 3507/2023, and I think that we should probably call the question. All in favor? The motion passes. And now the corporate administrator will be pleased to know that I'm going to go backwards to amendment bylaw number 3506/2023. The motion is that the Council repeal first and second reading from May 23rd, 2023, and gives first and second readings to the City of Prince Rupert Zoning Amendment Bylaw 3506/2023 to permit childcare facilities in all public facilities zones. And I guess it might be appropriate if I asked the corporate administrator or Dr. Buchan to explain why we were what the process piece is here, why we're repealing and then repeating it.
Mr. Chair, I'll defer to the corporate administrator.
Thank you, Councillor. At the May meeting, first and second reading was given, and then the approval to waive public notice. And in accordance with the rules for waiving a public notice, you must do that prior to the first and second reading. So we will repeal the first and second reading. Public notice waiver has already been posted, and then we can redo first and second reading this evening.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Did we not? I'm having a terrible time here. I must be getting tired. Moved Councillor Nish, seconded Councillor Skelton Morvan. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. We now find ourselves at item 10, Council Round Table, if I don't have a correction coming my way. I would like to lead off with a couple of comments on a couple of events. One, the obvious event that we could not possibly have missed in Prince Rupert this weekend, the Seafest. The weather cooperated, which is always a bonus. Whatever I saw in terms of the events were very well attended. The spirits were high. Just a specific comment on the parade. The level of effort that went into all of the entries was remarkable, and I think that we have an element of that in place where winners are picked in categories and so on. But I think what's important there is to respect the effort of everybody that was involved. There's just some really excellent contributions. And I think really we all win when the town comes to life as it did on this weekend. I wish it could be like that every weekend. But particular credit to the Special Events Society, who took on what is actually quite a massive undertaking. And I think it was a great success, and I'm very pleased to be a part of it. The second event that I was a part of was last Thursday, and that was it was held at the middle school, in the middle school gym, and it was the blessing of a canoe designed by artist Russell Mather, the Anastasia canoe. And it was a very moving event, obviously a subject of great passion among those involved. But the things that struck out to me, there were 600 people involved in various points along the process of painting that canoe. It was a project years in the making. I was the beneficiary of a very thoughtful explanation by Russell Mather of the various forms of art that are on the sides of the canoe. So I understood much more about the significance of each element. And the other thing that I'd like to recognize is that it was a collaborative effort between the Department of Fisheries and L'Aquilams, with the leadership of Russell Mather. And I think that alone is of tremendous significance to see that kind of cooperative effort. I think it's quite meaningful that way. So with that, I would defer to other members of Council. Councillor Cunningham.
Just on the Seafest part of it, I got dragged out of bed quite early Saturday morning to help organize the parade. Being retired, I was kind of sleepy-eyed when I first got there, but it all turned out very well. What I'd like to thank is all the volunteers that showed up, and especially this time around, the young volunteers. We weren't all gray-haired this time, which was nice to see. The participation in the parade, there was around 40 entries. It was nice to see the enthusiasm of the different contestants, and that was just unbelievable. What I also noticed as I ended that and ran around with grandchildren and children is the participation in the sporting events. It was phenomenal. I have a 6-year-old grandson that I went to watch play 3-on-3 hockey with, and they were playing against the Rampage, and it was just unbelievable how those Rampage players came out and played against 6-year-old kids and let them score on them and take the puck away from them and things like this. The community involvement was just unreal. And also on that fact that both the senior men's soccer team and the senior women's soccer team both won their tournaments, which is, it was, they used Port Ed soccer field as well as both ours. It was quite a community effort in the region as well, with Port Ed helping out too, and that. So it was really nice to see the whole community come together, and the smiles on people on 3rd Avenue and that, and the people from out of town, and the shine and show was just phenomenal with people from all over the region there. So it was really good to see.
Councillor Forster.
Thank you. I'll echo the comments that have been made, thanking all the volunteers for Seafest. That was amazing. I also did want to acknowledge this month is Indigenous History Month, and it's a great opportunity for each of us to take a moment, review the 94 calls to action under the Truth and Reconciliation Report. We do, as we've all become aware, we have 40% of our community is Indigenous, and it's incumbent upon each of us to become a bit more aware of how we can start making better changes and better choices to support people. It's also Philippine Heritage Month, and it's also Pride Month. And this coming Saturday is actually a Pride event at the Wheelhouse Pub, the new one. It's also a busy day because it's also Lock-in for Love at the BC SPCA, where money raised goes to our local SPCA, and it's also the Dry Grad, because I hope everybody knows, we had quite a few amazing graduates graduate from our local high school this past week, and that's always a cause for celebration. I also wanted to flag, I have been selected, fully funded, not by our community, but by Local Leadership United, to go to a harm reduction forum next week in Vancouver. So I will be attending that. It will not cost our city any money. They are fully funding people from across the province to go to learn more about what we can do to help start reversing some of the harms of what's happening in many of our communities and start making better changes. So just wanted to leave space for other people to add things, but those are the ones I wanted to flag. Thank you.
Councillor Randawa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, would like to thank all the organizers for organizing CFest, and everybody appreciate their efforts. Only concern I heard is the next time people like to see on 2nd Avenue and like old days, so they can have more time to see that. So for next year, if city or special event can include 2nd Avenue, that would be nice.
Councillor Niche.
As it was mentioned about the Wheelhouse there, I just thought I would mention that too. I attended it wasn't really a soft opening, but kind of a thank you to everyone who's involved with making that project go ahead, and being in that building and seeing it come to life again was awesome. I'm so glad that we got to see it. And last night I was actually down at the waterfront and looked at it when it was all lit up it was getting dark out, and it was all lit up with all the new lights on that building, and it's so much better than plywood. And I just hope we can continue that throughout our community and start revitalizing everything. And you know, that's an asset that is owned by all taxpayers of this community, and it's amazing on what it looks like now. And I hope everyone goes and supports that business so that it thrives in that new location for many years.
Mr. Chair,
Mayor Pond.
If I can, I want to sort of jump off of what Councillor Niche is saying, and that you know, certainly plywood in the downtown is a concern. I've had some discussions. People are struggling because of challenges just getting glaziers to get the glass in. But along that lines, I have a question for staff around an issue that comes up often, and that is I know we're close to issuing a permit on the demolition of the Belmont. I wonder if I could get an update on that.
Dr. Buchan.
Mr. Chair, if I can ask the corporate administrator to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I spoke to our Development Services Department this afternoon, and my ink will be on that paper tomorrow morning. So we are in a position to proceed. We have been working with the owner of the property to move forward on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Skelton Morvan.
Just wanted to echo the notion on June being National Indigenous Peoples Month, as well as Pride Month as well. I think for folks that live and reside on St. Pierre territory, it's worth the exploration and taking a dive back into some of the histories and everything else, and just some kind of context and pieces around folks that you know, this system is something that and it's a tough topic, I know, because it's a system that we inherited together, and for me, and just kind of where my background comes from, and all of those pieces that folks may not fully understand the intricacies on how that all plays out and everything else. In our society today, I think a lot of folks are really working to build bridges. The city of Prince Rupert is a kind of an example of that, and how we can work together to create collective prosperity agreements and things along lines of that. For us, I think it's just kind of recognizing, where we live, learn, and play on. It was not initially Canada's to begin with. So when you look at those pieces and where those points come from, again, when we see different projects, especially Indigenous housing projects, getting the pushback that they receive, not to speak to tonight's, because that's not necessarily the case, but again, just finding that, again, the vast majority of the need falls in our Indigenous side of our community, which makes up about 53% of our population, and myself being the only representation on the elected side of the table, at least municipally. So for us to kind of just take a dive into those pieces and see, some of the truth, again, has just surfaced only about 2 years ago now, with the voices of 215 children now calling out to be brought home, along with probably tens of thousands more. For me, and I guess for folks that probably follow me on Facebook, probably know that there's a bit of a change that potentially might be happening this summer. I've announced my candidacy for Chief Councillor of the Metlakatla First Nation, which, in the event of the election, would result in me resigning from my position, triggering a by-election for the city. For me, again, it's just how can we find ways to build bridges and create opportunities for everybody? And I think for me, this has been a deeper calling for me to step into this space and into that arena. And I just want to thank everybody out there that for their support and over the years. And just again, we'll be looking forward to the summer. Thank you.
Anybody else? I would then entertain a motion to Councillor Cunningham.
On that note, congratulations to Councillor Reid Skelton-Morven, and I wish him luck.
I appreciate that, Councillor Cunningham. I also wanted to speak to the canoe race that we took place. I ended up with heat stroke, unfortunately, at the end of the race. We ended up in third place. But just again, to shout out to all the teams that took place, including Department of Fisheries and Oceans with their new canoe. And I think that wax that they did at the end of the day kind of gave them a little bit more momentum and kind of an ease of use through the ocean. But Lac Aux Lambs ended up taking the cake. So just a shout out to the Lac Aux Lambs First Nation and their members for taking the first place slot, and probably the most candy I've ever seen in a basket, which was kind of interesting for a prize for a canoe race. But anyways.
And this must be the first time that the chair of a meeting has jumped the gun and tried to adjourn early. I will, however, now call for a motion to adjourn to the closed meeting. Can I have some direction? Is there what is the procedure for a point of information?
Mr. Chair, can I have the question again, please?
We have somebody in the gallery has asked for a point of information, and I'm not sure procedurally what that means.
Mr. Chair, there is no procedure for that at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not on the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Can I don't think I don't think there's any place for that. Can you direct your question to perhaps to the corporate administrator once we've adjourned? Could we do that? I need a motion to adjourn. We are adjourning to a closed meeting under Section 90 of the Community Charter to consider items related to one or more of the following. Section 90.1C and 90.1E. Moved Councillor Skelton-Morven, seconded Councillor Niche. All in favor? The motion is carried. We will adjourn. We'll take 5 minutes and then come back and start the closed meeting.